episode 172 of the Sedona Soul Sisters Show. And this episode is a turning point, not only in my life, but in our journey together. I just completed the Ecstatic Empath Series, which I originally thought was going to be an 8-week series. And I believe it ended up being 28 episodes. So 14 episodes on the Sedona Soul Sisters Show and 14 episodes on the Desire Sessions podcast. And I want to share with you a real-time integration and evolution of what happened during that series, which was surprising in many ways, and also really exciting about what is coming from here. You're listening to or watching the Sedona Soul Sisters Show, where we share psychic guidance and healing for embodied spiritual awakening. I'm Christelle Cucci. I'm on a mission to support spiritual practitioners to access your intuition, unlock your psychic gifts, and live your purpose. A big thanks to our listeners all over the world, and a special shout out and a boost of love to our listeners in Victoria, British Columbia, in Canada, topping the locations chart for the listeners of the podcast from last week. You can schedule sessions in Sedona or a virtual Reiki healing, life coaching, Akashic Recode, soul contract work, timeline healing, and more at sedonasoulsisters.com. Each breath you take aligned with love repairs the healing web on planet Earth. When I took over the Sedona Soul Sisters Show, my intention was to keep doing weekly shows. I also have my own podcast called the Desire Sessions podcast, and I wanted to do weekly shows there as well, which it's a lot, because I do everything for the show, which at some point that will change. But at this point, it's been really important for me to be hands-on and in the work of creating, recording, producing, publishing. When I started doing both podcasts, at first I was doing 2 completely separate shows, which was a little nuts. And then my intuition said, do the same topic in 2 very different shows. And that's when the Sedona Soul Sisters Show became the education storytelling piece, and the Desire Sessions podcast became the healing hypnotic journey, which once I'd started doing that made everything so much better for me. It is still a lot to create, produce, and publish 2 shows a week all on my own. Yet the time that I've been doing this, I think I have created, produced, and published 62 episodes in 2024 so far, which is wild to me, because the Desire Sessions podcast at the beginning of this year only had like 32 episodes. So I have doubled that number in just 1 year. In creating and publishing 2 podcast episodes a week, it demands that I minimize procrastination and perfectionism. I mean, still sometimes things stack up and I'm doing it later than I want it to be, but I have built much stronger muscles in coming up with the idea, organizing the content, and the whole process has gotten so much more streamlined, which I'm really grateful that I have done this. A few months ago, I had an idea to create a series for both podcasts. That was the Ecstatic Empath Series, which we just wrapped up last week, which was an enormous success. And there are so many things I loved about doing it. For the last several years, I've been really focused on refining my teachings rather than just creating new courses and new things all of the time. One of my deep desires is to someday publish a book, and I have been trying, quote unquote, to publish a book for many years. But my problem with why I have not yet published a book, because writing is one thing. Publishing a book is a whole other reality and galaxy and whole other level of refining my teachings, which I haven't been willing to do. The beauty of creating the Ecstatic Empath Series is that I was producing 2 podcast episodes a week, refining the teachings, getting it better than it was, and then knowing that I will refine it the next time I come around to it. In going through the Ecstatic Empath Series, there were so many insights I gained from putting all of that information together. There are a few things that I want to mention here. It will shift the offerings at Sedona Soul Sisters. The Ecstatic Empath Series focused on psychic and intuitive gifts related to each chakra. One of the things that has become so clear to me, especially this year, that I have been offering psychic sessions, is that I utilize my psychic gifts in ways that are different from what it appears is much more common, especially in Sedona, that psychics do readings. And for most of my career, really up until this year, I didn't call myself a psychic. I didn't offer psychic readings. While I work in the Akashic records, it always felt very different. In purchasing Sedona Soul Sisters and offering psychic sessions was a really interesting part of my own personal journey. And what I have learned is that I am no longer offering psychic readings. I never really did. I called them psychic sessions. But here's the thing that has gotten super clear to me. So often they come to a psychic here in Sedona and they want me to predict the future. How it feels to me is they are handing over their power and saying, tell me what's going to happen. That is not how I use my psychic gifts, nor is that how I want to use my psychic gifts. I am most interested in utilizing my psychic gifts to help someone first learn to trust their own intuition and psychic gifts, and also to create the future. For most people that are coming in and saying, tell me the future for the next 3 to 6 months, most often the next 3 to 6 months isn't that interesting. Yes, there might be a surprise here or there, but in general, I don't care. What I am interested in is creating the future and getting really clear on what you desire and then getting on to that timeline. The way I see it when someone comes in and says, tell me the future, they're giving me their power and saying, tell me what's going to happen. When I work with someone who comes in that wants to create the future and fine-tune their energy, their physical, mental, emotional, and energy body to create the future and to stay on the timeline of what they most desire, that lights me up. To work with soul contracts, not what do they say and tell me what it says, but to create the soul contracts. So I utilize my psychic gifts to create the present and the future rather than to predict. In the last episode that I talked about timeline healing, I talked about what is most likely going to happen, what is possible to happen, and then the dream timeline. And to me, people come in and they want me to tell them the future, and that's what's most likely going to happen. And how many people do you know that it's like what's most likely going to happen in the next few months is like the most amazing thing they could ever imagine? It's usually not what's happening. So I'm much more interested in helping people shift onto what's possible, what could happen in the next 3 to 6 months, and how can we fine tune your energy and align your actions with creating that, and then to move on to the dream timeline. That, to me, is much more interesting. It's like the phrase, give a person a fish or teach them how to fish. I am most interested with everything that I'm doing in my business and with Sedona Soul Sisters is teaching you how to utilize your own psychic gifts, how to tune into your intuition. It's clear that there are many topics that the Sedona Soul Sisters before me were doing, that topics that I am not an expert in and that I don't have an interest in. And so this refinement and shifting of the business and what I offer and the podcast is a beautiful thing. And of course, it's a little bit unsettling, but that's part of creating the trust in my intuition and my guidance to lead me to the place that I can best be of service, where it's like sometimes there is a letting go of the people that were listening to the show that are no longer happy with what I'm offering, or the people that are used to coming for a certain type of psychic reading that I don't offer. And so it's important in developing my intuition and being able to do that and being excited about the clarity that I am receiving, being excited about what's coming forward, being more powerful in the message that I'm sharing, and also trusting and knowing that the people who are aligned with this vision and excited about what I'm working on will be drawn here. One of the other insights I want to briefly mention that really shocked me. In the series, I talked about a few psychic gifts that I have said no to all along. And I do believe that there is a way that if you say no to all your psychic gifts, yes, you'll shut them all down. For me specifically, I've never wanted to see auras, and I've also been resistant and not open to mediumship. Yet when I was speaking about mediumship, I had a massive opening, which I am so grateful for, which would not have happened if I hadn't done the series, which of course I thought I was doing the series for you all, which of course that is the main focus. Yet what I received from doing the series, from doing all of the research, from doing the journeys, from diving into some of these psychic gifts, which are not natural to me, it has opened doorways, which I am super excited about. And with mediumship, the part that really opened for me, while I still am not interested in doing mediumship readings, where someone comes to me and says, hey, I want to speak with my sister who passed away, or my parents, or people. But when I invited you all to tune into master teachers that have crossed over, that lit me up in a way that was surprising to me. So I am really excited to see where that leads me and what direction that goes. And that will be something that will be more of a personal practice, yet who knows? We might find out that in 2025, I offer a channeling series on the podcast. Who knows what will happen? And this is the beauty of being on the journey and being open, receptive, studying, asking questions, being open to guidance, to our own psychic gifts opening us. Even in the next series that's coming, there's a way that that body of work that came through in the Ecstatic Empath Series is getting built upon for the next series. So now I am going to continue doing these collaborative series between the two shows because that feels exciting for me. It also supports me in one of my main goals, which is refining my teachings and making them more accessible. I also absolutely was blown away by the journeys on the Desire Sessions podcast. So many of those, when I do the Akashic Record sensual hypnosis sessions, I am in more of a trance state than I am right now. While I do tune into the Akashic Records for this show, the Desire Sessions podcast is a much deeper state of trance and intuition, and my logical mind doesn't get in the way as much, which is a beautiful thing. And also, I received so much from those journeys because I am in a much more receptive state when I'm doing them and being guided myself in a way. While I don't love the word channeling, it is the best way to describe that body of work, is that I am in a receptive state to receiving the transmission that is moving through me so that I deeply receive it. In going through the shows for the Sedona Soul Sisters show, if you didn't watch that Ecstatic Empath Series, I integrated the clairs, or the psychic gifts, intuitive powers, into the 7 core chakras, which actually became the 9 core chakras, which became the 11 essential chakras and energies, which I allowed it to evolve. At first, I was like, it's an 8-week series. It's an 8-week series. And I kept getting the guidance that it was going to be more than that. And luckily, I listened and followed the guidance. And it was really a beautiful opportunity. So I thank every one of you who listened and shared the show and sent in your questions. It is so helpful to me to know how it lands for you and for me to know what questions you have so that I can build that in to what I'm sharing next. The next series I'm super excited about. As I was tuning in to what the next series is going to be, what landed first was not the next series I can do, because that is supposed to start this week. But instead, I'm doing an integration session because it's so much that I'm receiving, and the series take time to get everything set up, for me to set up the place that people can opt in and to get all of the back end things set up, as well as to have the plan and the outline and the blah, 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 blah. There's a lot that needs to go into place to launch the next series. So it was clear that I couldn't launch either one of the next 2 series that is now set up. And then also this evening, a series landed for the next series, which will probably happen in January. So now it's like I am the runway of all these different series, which are going to come through the Sedona Soul Sisters Show and the Desire Sessions podcast, which is super exciting and a little bit overwhelming, because now I have not only the next series, which is Manifest with Desire. I have the series that comes after that, which the working title right now is The Light and Shadow of Soul Purpose. And the series after that is Permission Granted. So now we have the next 3 series laid out. Stay tuned to find out if they actually unfold as they are being presented to me now. But what I want to tell you is that in listening to my intuition and being willing to put forward these series in this way, which I don't see other people doing on podcasts. So this evolution of the podcast and the show is so exciting for me, because it is me building these muscles of refinement and putting together a series of podcast episodes, which each podcast episode can be listened to individually. But for those people who want to listen to the whole series and go back and forth between the podcast and the show, you're going to have a body of work, which I am really excited about. I started doing energy work when I was a child, long before I knew what it was. Yet I went to my first hands-on energy healing training back in 1991. I've been immersed in personal growth and intuitive development for my entire life. And I've always been interested in creating my life. I've believed that we create the future and we are responsible for so much of what is happening in our lives. Keeping in mind, of course, there is the collective responsibility. There is also our unconscious desires. I dove headfirst into personal development when I was a teenager and read every book I could get my hands on and listened to every tape back then to CD set and all of these things. It's been a fascination. And early on in that journey, I came across the teaching is that you create your own reality, which I have been fascinated by. Yet, it's much more complex than, of course, that one sentence makes it out to be. Because if it were true that we can create our own reality, then we would all have exactly what we need and want at all times. The conversation is much more complex than that because there is our own individual desires, our unconscious desires. Then there is the collective conscious and unconscious. Then there is our ancestry. Then there are also our past lives. So there's all of this intensity and energy that makes a simple statement like you create your own reality. It inspires the question, if I create my own reality, why don't I have exactly what I want at all times? The next series about manifest with your desire. My fascination with desire over the last few years is not only looking at the ways in which desire is seen as a taboo, even in the manifestation community. It's like, don't want things or desire things because then it pushes them away and you're left wanting, you're left desiring. Yet in this series, Manifest with Desire, the key component that we are going to look at in this is our conscious and unconscious desire. Well, how can we explore our unconscious desire if it's not conscious? Well, here's the thing. We begin looking at, if this is what I say I want, but my experience is the opposite, then we have an expression of the unconscious desire being manifest, as well as the power of the collective conscious and unconscious desire being manifest. This next podcast series will be looking at the creative power of desire to manifest what we desire and to embrace our unconscious desires, which means I'm going to be bringing in a big component of shadow work into the next series, the next 2 series, which I am very excited about. I do want to mention the next series, which I'm calling the Light and Shadow of Soul Purpose right now. And the reason I want to mention it is because the next series is a solo series. The next series, Manifest with Desires, will be similar in that the Sedona Soul Sisters Show will be the storytelling and educational component of the topic. And the Desire Sessions podcast will be the sensual hypnosis and healing journey. The Light and Shadow of Soul Purpose, that series, I will be taking volunteers that want to come onto the show with me. The Sedona Soul Sisters Show is video. The Desire Sessions podcast is audio only. But there will be an opportunity as we work through that series, which will also be based on the chakras. So there will be certain challenges that clients will be facing that will agree to come on to the show to receive embodied coaching in the first part, and then to receive a customized desire session hypnotic journey on the second show. So the reason I wanted to mention this is because I need and want to get the word out, to find those people that are comfortable and confident in being vulnerable and being on video to go through this experience, and for the benefit of each individual as well as the collective. So many insights can be gained from watching someone else's breakthrough. So you will be receiving one free session that will be recorded and published on the 2 podcasts. If you are interested, excited, and ready to be a volunteer on the Light and Shadow Soul Purpose series, I don't have the fancy Google form, which is one of the many things that need to be set up to make all of this happen. If you are interested to volunteer for that opportunity, stay tuned for the details. Like I said, this is why this new series isn't launching next week, because there's a bunch of things that need to be set up for that to happen. And at this point, I am a one-woman show, but I wanted to mention it so that you can sit with it and see if it resonates with you. And I will have that opportunity ready for next week. Next week, Terry Ann Russell, who is one of the Sedona Soul Sisters, is coming back onto the show to do a starseed show with me. So she will be teaching us about what starseeds are, the work that she does, and then she will be doing a live session with me. I'm super excited about. So that will be next week. The following week, the Manifest with Desire series will start. You can go to manifestwithdesire.com. Enter your name and email. You will receive links to all the podcasts as well as any additional resources. Thank you for being a part of our community. I'm honored to support your embodied spiritual awakening. Leave a review and follow on your favorite podcast app. Until next time, breathe gently, listen to your guidance, and create miracles.